Akai News report that a Nigerian-born Catholic priest, Anthony Odion, has been convicted by a jury in Texas, United States, for sexually assaulting women who were under his spiritual care. The 57-year-old cleric, a naturalized U.S. citizen ordained in Nigeria in 1993, now faces the responsibility of life imprisonment. Let's take note of the year 1993. Let's continue. The verdict came after a trial in Waco, Texas, where a jury of 8 women and 4 men took about 2 hours of deliberation on Friday to find Odion guilty. He was convicted on 1 count of first-degree sexual assault and 2 counts of second-degree sexual assault. But let us not rush past the weight of that number. 2 hours of deliberation. That is not a jury that struggled. That is a jury that saw the evidence and made up its mind almost immediately. The news gives us the facts of the conviction, but what the headlines do not capture is the machinery of manipulation that made this possible. 2 women identified as Mary Dion and Jane Dion testified that Odion used his position as a priest to pressure them into sexual relationships. Mary Dion said the relationship began while Odion was providing spiritual counseling during her difficult divorce. Think about that. A woman in the middle of a marital collapse, vulnerable, seeking God's comfort through his servant. Instead of comfort, she got exploitation. Her son once walked in on them during the act. That child will carry that image forever. Jane Duen testified that Odion pressured her into sexual acts under the same pretense of spiritual guidance. Prosecutors called it abuse of clerical authority during periods of emotional vulnerability, and they were right. Odion pleaded not guilty. His lawyers argued the relationship were consensual, but the jury rejected that, and here is why. Consent obtained through spiritual coercion is not consent. When a man stands as the bridge between you and your God, saying no to him feels like saying no to heaven itself. That is the weapon, and Odion wielded it. Akai News learned that a third woman was originally part of the case on a first-degree charge, but she failed to appear. Prosecutors dismissed that aspect because she was described as extremely emotionally fragile and in an extremely tenuous state. They chose not to track her down and force her to testify. That decision tells us something painful. The damage was so deep that even justice could not demand her presence without risking further harm. Now, let me speak plainly about how this hits Nigerians, both at home and abroad. First, this damages the trust between the faithful and the clergy. The Catholic Church in Nigeria has long been seen as a moral anchor. Parents send their children to priests for counseling. Women seek spiritual direction from men they are taught to revere as fathers. When a priest ordained in Nigeria is convicted of such crimes in America, the shadow falls back home. Every Nigerian mother now has a reason to pause before trusting any clergy with her daughter. Second, it fuels the already raging fire of anti-clerical sentiment worldwide. The Catholic Church has spent decades battling abuse scandals. Yet, here is another one. Nigerians watching this news may begin to ask, how many priests like Father Odion are still in active ministry in Lagos, Enugu, or Benin? That question alone is a crisis of faith. Thirdly, it distracts from the real work of the church. Why good priests are struggling to feed the poor and counsel the broken, they now have to answer for the crimes of a brother. That is not fair, but that is the reality of collective reputation. Akai News gathered that Odion had already been suspended from ministry in 2019 following earlier allegations. Let's take note of that. That Father Odion has already been suspended since 2019 following earlier allegations. Let's continue. Suspension in 2019, convicted in 2026, 7 years. Look at that margin. He was suspended in 2019. He was convicted in 2026. How many years difference? 7 years margin. Let's continue. How many women were hurt in those 7 years? That is not justice delayed. That is justice denied. Here is my truth, and I do not mince words. Father Anthony Odion is not a victim of a conspiracy. He is not being persecuted for his faith as a Catholic priest. He is a convicted sex offender who used his collar as a mask. The fact that he is a Nigerian born as a layer of shame, not because Nigerian produces bad priests, it produces some of the finest, but because every bad apple spoils the reputation of the entire basket. The jury took 2 hours. That is not a closed case. That is an open and short case. The DNA evidence linking him to a child reportedly fathered during his time in Louisiana sealed it. Let's take note of that. The DNA evidence linking him to a child reportedly fathered during his time in Louisiana sealed it. That means he already have a child. Let's continue. A child, a living, breathing human being who will one day learn how they were conceived. That is the legacy of Father Anthony Odion. And let me address the silence. Where is the public statement from the Catholic Bishop Conference of Nigeria? Where is the condemnation from his home diocese? Akai News reports that as of this analysis, no major statement has been issued by the Nigerian church hierarchy, specifically addressing the fact that one of their ordained sons now sits convicted of sexual assault. That silence is dangerous. It suggests either indifference or an unwillingness to confront the rot within. Now, what should be done? For the Catholic Church in Nigeria, begin an independent, transparent audit of all clergy with credible allegations against them, not internal reviews that disappear into Vatican drawers. Re-investigation with real consequences. If a priest has been accused and the accusation have substance, remove him from active ministry immediately, not after 7 years. For seminarians, Review the screening process for candidates. The question should not only be, is this man called by God, but also, is this man safe around vulnerable people? Psychological evaluation must be as important as theological training. For the faithful, do not lose your faith because of the failures of men, but also do not turn a blind eye. If you see something, say something. Report suspicious behavior to church authorities and to civil authorities. The days of handling abuse in-house are over. For Nigerian media, stop treating clergy as untouchable. Investigate, ask questions, follow the evidence. A priest who abuses is not above the law. Reporting the truth is not an attack on religion. It is a service to the innocent. For the government, strengthen laws around sexual abuse, especially by persons in positions of spiritual authority. Nigeria needs clear statutes that define coercion by clergy as aggravated assault. The United States took this case seriously. Nigeria must show that it can do the same. Over to you, my people. This man was ordained in Nigeria. Does the Nigerian church bear any responsibility for his action? And when will our religious institutions stop protecting predators in the name of protecting their image? Drop your take in the comments. And if you are just now joining this channel, you have found a space where we call things by their proper names. No sugarcoating, no sacred cows. I am Joseph Iyaji. The news gives you the verdict. I give you the analysis that makes you think twice before you trust blindly. Stay sharp, stay safe, and always remember, a robe does not make a man holy. His actions do.